Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Quarter Horse Hauler with Ryan Fleetwood. Today we have a distinguished guest from the AQHA, Tammy Canida, who is the head registrar at the American Quarter Horse Association, and she's with us to tell us a little bit about what's happening inside that building and inside that association. We're going to talk about how the AQHA is governed, the process of moving to digital work and digital registration. We've got all sorts of great things for you today. So, without further ado, Tammy, how are you? Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Ryan. I'm so thankful that you invited me to be on and happy to be here and talk to you about AQHA and what goes on here at the office.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So maybe start off, Tammy, with telling us how many decades you have worked inside the association, what your job title is, and what that means.
You said how many decades, and it makes me feel very old. So this is my...
I didn't mean it that way.
This is my 39th year.
I meant in terms of your experience. Yeah.
39th year, so working towards 40 now, which is hard to believe when I think about how many years it's been. And I've held a lot of roles at AQHA, but most of those roles have been with respect to the registration department in some capacity. And I've been the registrar for, I don't know, the last 3 or 4 years. And prior to that, I was the director of registration operations and several roles within registration, and even on the project team during the computer transition in 2019, 2020, and those years to help get us on level ground. And as the registrar, I get to work with a lot of great people every day, both inside this building and outside of the building.
Yeah, I can attest to that. In my involvement in the past few years with AQHA, I seem to have met, including yourself, just so many wonderful people that really want the best for the association members and for the association itself, and obviously the horses that we all like together.
Yes, sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And Tammy, I just want to take the opportunity to say how wonderful you've been to me ever since I first met you coming to conventions, and you've answered my questions patiently and helped to bring me along and understand the process that happens inside of the association, how governance works, and to get to where my interests really lie, which is on the committee that you are the liaison for, which is a stud book and registration committee. So thank you.
Absolutely. I'm happy to do that. And you're really, when I think about everything that I do every day, teaching people about this organization is something I'm very passionate about. So if anybody ever wants to talk about AQHA, I'm an open book on that piece of it.
Well, and you're very good at it. So with that, Tammy, would you run through what the governance of the association is and how that filters down into policy, how that gets enacted on your end and inside of the building, inside the association, et cetera?
Absolutely. So AQHA, being a member-run organization, has a board of directors. And the board of directors is made up of members around the world, and they are allocated based on the population of horses in their areas. And those directors sit on the board and come to the convention each year. They also meet with committees throughout the year. And each year, members can propose a rule change. And that can be something minor in the rule book or something new, brand new, and to intrigue the quarter horse industry. Those rule proposals are presented to the subcommittees or the standing committees at the annual convention, which is held each year, usually in March. And we welcome our members to come to that meeting, as well as the board members. The board members are required to be there. They will review those rule proposals and either accept the change as recommended, they'll modify the change, or they'll reject it. They spend a lot of time doing their homework to evaluate those changes that are proposed to see how it impacts the industry as a whole, taking out the special interest that it would satisfy one or two people to try to make sure that it's going to impact the industry properly. In the case of the Stud Book and Registration Committee specifically, which is where I spend the most of my time, that committee's role, along with the Nominations and Credentials Committee, their role is a little bit different because the decisions they make and present at the convention to the membership as well as the board of directors, when those are passed at that convention, then it becomes law or is rejected and doesn't move forward past that. All other committees, such as the show committee or the racing committee, that might have a rule proposal, it'll go to the membership at the convention as well, and then it will go to the board of directors, and then it will come to the executive committee following the convention to make sure that the changes being recommended can be supported before they move it to the next step.
Yeah, interesting. So Tammy, let's talk for a minute on what the difference is between all of the committees at AQHA and Stud Book and Registration and Nominations and Credentials. What is the difference there? Where does the flow separate on that, on those adopted rules coming through?
Sure. If you talk about Stud Book and Registration Committee, any rule that it pertains to the registration of a horse, whether that be the issuing of the certificate or transfer of ownership or genetic testing, that all falls under the purview of the Stud Book and Registration Committee. So the Stud Book and Registration Committee will evaluate everything that may impact that registration rule. And our rules pertaining to registration, we have about 200 plus rules and sub-rules related to it, and they evaluate all of the touch points. And when they make a recommendation to change the rule, then they will take it to the membership at the actual convention. The membership will evaluate it again and either reject or amend or pass it to take it to the board of directors. And then the board of directors will have the same reading of that agenda and that action on the agenda to make sure that it needs to go forward. Nominations and credentials is much the same, but in the nominations and credentials, their purview is our bylaws in the rule book. So everything that you look into the rule book under the bylaws, the Nominations and Credentials Committee would evaluate that and make the same steps for the proposal for the membership and the board of directors and take it from there. If in the case of a registration rule, typically if a rule is adopted or a rule change is adopted at the convention and approved at that board level, it would typically go into effect immediately unless they proposed a date in the future. Anything that going forward from that point forward would fall under those rules, including older horse registrations. If you're choosing to register it today under today's rules, then you're typically going to follow today's rules, not what would have been when your foal was born.
Right. Yeah. It would be too unwieldy to try to go back and see what the rules were 10 years ago, for example, or something like that.
Yes.
So for the benefit of those listening, then, Stud Book and Registration changes, additions, deletions, or action, as you call it, that goes to general membership, and then it goes to the directors, and it does not go to executive committee, correct?
That is correct. Yes, sir. And those rule changes come from our members. And, on occasion, a staff person may recommend some wording be modified just for clarification, but not necessarily a full rule change proposal. Those rules that come into the Stud Book and Registration Committee are initiated by our membership.
I think that's a good point to also clarify and confirm for listeners that any member of the AQHA can submit a rule change, addition, deletion at any point that they would like, and that when those standing committee agendas are put out prior to convention, that all of those rule changes are suggested by members.
That is absolutely correct. We've immediately following this convention, we opened up the form online for members to make proposals for next year's convention. And we've probably already got a handful. Typically when someone encounters an occurrence where they think a rule needs to be changed, they're going to take care of making us aware of that immediately. So we have them go ahead and fill out that proposal, because in the case of like rules of registration, as staff, we don't have the authority to make exceptions to those rules or amend the rules on the fly to meet their needs. So we recommend that they submit a rule change proposal to come before the stud book at the next year. And of course, we'll publish it. We've made it available on our website leading into convention. Towards the end of the year, we'll start reminding people, if you have suggestions, go out and fill out the form or submit your rule change proposal so we have it on the agenda. And the deadline to do that is December 31st prior to the committee meetings. And that's to give us time to get everything together for the committees to have in front of them. And so they can have a healthy discussion, because you do want them to spend the time that they need to on it.
Yeah. And I can say, as an observer of stud book and registration, and most recently as a participant in stud book and registration, there is some lively discussions that happen in those committees.
My favorite time of year, for sure, because to watch the governance at work and the decisions that are made, I don't think people realize the importance of that until you're involved in it, because every decision they make in that room impacts everyone in the industry. And we're very fortunate to have a board of directors that wants to be involved and cares so much about the industry. And in the case of the Stud Book and Registration Committee, it's interesting to watch and refreshing to watch that when you come in that door for that meeting, we have members that represent the ranching industry, the racing industry, the show industry, or the breeding industry, or maybe they're just an owner of a horse. We have all of those areas represented in that committee. Because our breed is so diverse, we need to have that diversity in the committee. Excuse me. They can separate those special interests when they walk in that door, and they're wearing their stud book hat instead of my racing hat or my show hat, and they take it very seriously. So every decision they make is very thoughtful, and that's something I respect and enjoy watching happen.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I have seen so many interesting conversations from all those different perspectives of people from the industry, and I truly believe that they come into the room with the, as you said, the stud book hat on, with the idea of doing what's best for the registry in the long term. And as we're always reminded by one of the senior members of the committee before we start, we need to make decisions slowly. And it totally makes sense. And it makes more sense the more involved I am, because it could easily be 10 years before you begin to see the effects of a change, and even possibly longer than that. So
no, you're right.
It's it's an important place.
And that the reality, you mentioned Mr. Benham Stewart, and he is very thoughtful in that he says that, because if you make a change at this level, like you said, you may not see it for 10 years, 20 years. And if you decide it was a bad decision, you can't undo it. So you take it forward and manage it going forward. And in the case of the registry, you don't want those hindsight lessons of we should have done that differently on the negative aspect. So I think you're spot on as far as having to make thoughtful decisions. And I think that's important at every committee level, but it's definitely important at the stud book level, because everything that they do impacts the future of the breed.
Yeah. In broad terms, it's very interesting, enlightening, engaging to me to be at convention and see all of the people there, no matter what committee they're on, whether they're directors or just members, but the general positivity and sense of camaraderie and friendship amongst people, and that everybody wants the same thing, which is to have progress and to go forward. I also think that generally people that are not involved, that are more at arm's length to the association, just see a really slow moving machine. But the machine is moving forward, and there is progress. And Tammy, that's maybe a good place for us to talk about what are the changes, say in the last 5 years. What are the changes inside your department? How have things changed in customer service? What's your turnaround time right now? Sure. Things like that.
Okay, that's happy to share that. It's always good to share good news. In the last 5 years, there's been significant changes. I think if you talk to anybody in the industry, when you called our office 5 years ago, you couldn't reach us because the calls were so backed up. And today, that's not the case. Today, you're going to hold a few seconds most of the time. Peak times of the day, you might hold a few minutes, and there might be an occasional long hold if we've got a lot of calls going in or if we're short staffed for the day. But on average, our hold time's less than a minute and a half overall if you look at all of the calls that we get. One of the fun statistics that I shared just last week with our senior team here, just a year ago, the average number of calls that we received on a weekly basis easily passed 6,000 per week. And most of our members probably don't realize how many calls that we get every day, but 6,000 a week is a lot. And we've reduced that average in these past 6 months to 4,500. And while 4,500 calls a week is still a lot, to reduce the average in just a few months' time by 1,500 calls a week, that's huge. And we continue to see the progress of that declining week over week as we continue to make improvements in the services that we provide. Traditionally, today, our turnaround time, if you send us a transfer today and we get it today, it's probably going to be processed by tomorrow. And registration is 2 to 3 days. If everything's in order, we're turning them around in a matter of hours rather than weeks or months or 2019, 2018 years. So we hope that members are starting to see those improved services, and we're going to continue to work on them. We're still not where we need to be, but we're so much better placed today than where we were even a year ago. And we've made great strides on the employee piece of it. We've got top talent. We've hired top talent, and we've made sure that we have developed a training program to make sure that we grow them properly. Because our goal is, while they may not stay in customer service or member services, we want to make sure they stay at AQHA and in some capacity. So we want to train them the right way and carry that forward. And that carries down to our members and providing the quality of service that we're delivering.
Sure.
And we're always looking for rooms for improvement, so that'll continue to evolve.
I think that what you're talking about there really is the culture, right? The culture of the association and the people involved with it, and that culture spills out beyond the building stores, for sure.
Oh, it does, for sure. And, you mentioned that, and one of our board members called me a few months ago, and she said, "How are things really?" And I told her, we are in such a good place right now that I'm proud to talk about it and happy to share where we're at. And she said it's carrying over into their state affiliate because, when things are contentious, there's tension everywhere because it just carries on. So if we're delivering a happy product and you're talking to happy people, then it carries to your next level. And that's one of the things we even preach is you don't know where that person is on the other side. So we're going to be helpful no matter what. And then if we're not, we'll take care of it and make sure that we're addressing it for the next call.
So Tammy, you talked about the reduction in calls from 6,000 a week to 4,500 a week. And what have you done that's made that difference?
So, we've done a lot of things, and so it probably too much to go into, but some of the high level pieces of it. Number one is I mentioned the quality of folks that we're hiring and the training program that we can more effectively take care of the work, so we're not having to touch it more than one time most of the time. Another thing that we did was we started clearing out the backlog of what I call pending. If something comes into the office and we're missing something and we don't get an answer back, it would stay in pending perpetually. And that just creates an overhead that is overwhelming. And we, at one point, I'll use transfers as an example, because when we started the transfer catch-up efforts for pending, we probably had 30,000 in our pending files for transfers. And that was because we needed something to finish it. That could have been something as simple as just a signature from the seller or the certificate of registration or $20 to finish the transfer. Just such a wide variety of things that we just needed the buyer or the seller to give us more information so we could finish it. Well, we put a focused effort on clearing those out and looking at every file, and I put a team on it, and I called it Attack Pending, and challenged the department to just work that down to nothing. And that's what they worked on last year, was dropping that down from the big mark that it was down to where it was just a couple of thousand that were actively in progress that we were working on, and nothing out there that was dormant. And every thousand that we cleared out of pending, you could just feel the weight and the pressure lift off of the team. Plus the calls reduced because some of the things we were taking care of were moving them forward, not just closing them. So we were able to move them forward to the next step. We're taking that same approach on registration, because the registration was also a large backlog of the things that we needed something else to clear. So now with technology that we have today with our new computer system, and then other technologies such as the Adobe Sign, where we can initiate a document online and say, just sign it for us here, and we'll take it to the next step. So we've taken a more intentional focus on taking those steps to clear them out. And again, as each thousand clears out of the way, you just feel the pressure and the weight lift off of them, and it just reduces the noise. And I use that term a lot with the team too, because every one you get out of the way, you don't have to look at it again, and you're prepared to take care of the next one. And you feel like you have breathing room to take care of it fully, instead of just trying to push it forward to someone else to do.
Right. And so the association then, would it be fair to say that the association is moving into the modern world with the way that it's doing its business?
Trying to, for sure. We're developing I mentioned the Adobe Sign, that's a third party product that we use, but we're also developing a platform called My AQHA, where members will be able to take care of much of their business online. And that's going to take years to develop the way it needs to be developed, but that's important that we do it right. So the first thing that we launched with My AQHA, I call it transactional wise, is you can do your membership now through My AQHA. And it's done immediately when you do it that way. And you don't have to wait on anybody. You don't have to mail it to us or anything like that. So everything is done instantly. And we'll provide more self-service features to make it easier for our members.
Yeah. I know that when I last renewed my membership, I did it through My AQHA. And that was one of the points that I did want to talk about. For anybody who's listening, if you haven't signed up on My AQHA, you definitely should sign up there. And then isn't it an interesting thought to think about extrapolating the ease of that process then into registrations and transfers, etc.
For sure. And that's our goal. We'll never force people to use it. It'll be an option. And our goal will be to make it easy enough that you want to use it. And the benefit of that is for those members who choose to use it, that's great. You got the service, the level of service that you want that takes care of your needs. And that will free us up to take care of those who don't want to use it. And we'll continue to always take the paperwork and manage the things that way as much as we can. And like I said, our goal is to make it easy enough if you want to use it, but we'll still be here to support you no matter what.
Yeah, that's great. So, Tammy, that probably gives us the opportunity to talk about digital registration, which has been such a big thing in the association and for members of the association and staff members of the association, I'm sure. So let's touch a little bit perhaps first on just exactly how that process will come into play. Right now it's been pushed out to adoption of 2027, where the registration will become digital instead of physical. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about how that's going to happen and the technology to get there?
Sure. So with the digital certificate, the plan is that with the foals that are born in 2027, they would receive a digital certificate of registration rather than a paper certificate of registration. Now, a paper certificate, as far as getting a copy of that, would still be an option for those who want it, because we have a lot of members that want to put it in their notebook or in their safekeeping, but the negotiable document would be the digital certificate, as far as the official piece of it.
Yeah.
With the MyAQHA account, within their MyAQHA account, there will be a product called Digital Certificate Manager, or their Certificate Manager. And with that, you would have the ability to, number one, if it's a stallion registered as a stallion and you want to update it as a gelding, you'll be able to do that through that Certificate Manager instantly. If your horse passes away, you'll be able to do the same thing and not have to mail the certificate back to us. The other neat features that we've already built, because we had intended to go live with this a while back, the other neat features of it are you're going to be able to share a copy of the certificate. So if you're trying to enter a sale and they need it for the catalog page, or you need to give it to your trainer so they can enter it into a show or another event, there's a simple share feature that you can click on, type in their name and their email address, and they'll get a copy of it and have it in their hands within minutes. And you didn't have to give them your original certificate to do that, so it stays in your possession for safekeeping. And while that safekeeping is electronically, it's behind your member login, so it's in your safe space. But if you need to assign it to someone else, so for instance, the racetracks, they want the original in their possession before your horse can run at the track. So in that case, you would be able to assign the certificate to the track. And while it's assigned to the racetrack, you couldn't do anything with it other than view it, but you wouldn't be able to transfer ownership or send it to someone else without the track assigning it back to you. So that protects their interest in the horse, just like they would do with a piece of paper. But you didn't have to give them that original, and you didn't have to risk it being lost in the mail and being transferred around the country in any other way. Same with the sale company. There will be a consignment feature, so that if you have consigned the horse to a sale, they want the original certificate, plus they want the transfer in their folders, so that when they're ready to release the certificate after the sale, they have it in their possession to do that. So we also built a consignment feature. And with that consignment feature, as the seller, you would authorize them to sell the horse on your behalf. And by doing that, when they're ready to release it, the transfer would follow the paper, so you're not having to transfer other paperwork. And again, that risk of losing the certificate in the mail is no longer there, because it's all transferred digitally. Excuse me. Then once the sale company is ready to release the certificate, and typically a sale company is going to hold the certificate today until the funds have been processed. So almost every sale company, at least the major sale companies, they hold them for about 30 days until after the funds have all been processed. Then they'll have the ability to go out and release the certificate to AQHA and tell us who the buyer was. And that way it comes to AQHA immediately, and we can process them and get them on their way to their new owner.
So similar to online banking or anything that you would sign into online to use, behind that sign-in wall, that will be the same thing for AQHA.
Yes, a very good analogy there. Almost the exact same process, other than it's horse papers instead of your money. But yeah, the same
Sure.
process
Well,
for
that's also money, Tammy.
Well, that is true. That is very true, and that is going to be the benefit for sure are those transfers, because every day we have folks here that take care of the rush processing because someone's in a hurry, and for whatever reason, maybe they've got a sale or they've got an event that they need to go to, so they're having to FedEx it to us, and then pay a rush fees for us to process it immediately and then FedEx it back to them. Doing it this way, you lose all of that FedEx tracking and not having to do it. You can just submit it online and have it done within a matter of minutes most of the time, which is pretty exciting to think about where it's going to be. The other piece of it, though, that I want to mention, because some of the feedback that we've gotten as far as people being concerned is now they feel like they're going to have to do it online. And while the certificate manager is online, the transfer doesn't have to be. It can still be the paper form that's faxed to us or emailed to us. Not very many people use fax, but we still have quite a few that do. Or FedEx it to us, however they want to choose to do that. We're not going to force you to do it online outside of the certificate manager. And if it's someone who doesn't want to manage their certificate, they just have to give AQHA permission to do it for them. And we'll manage it for them.
Yeah. So to summarize that, even if people don't want to do things digitally, they can still send in registration applications, transfers, etc. on paper.
Yes, sir. Yes, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
And again, that self-service piece, everything you do online, it frees us up internally to make sure that we have the staffing to support those who choose not to do it online. And we'll always have that. We don't ever intend to do away with it totally.
Yeah. So, Tammy, really the only thing that changes is what the negotiable document is, how it exists.
Correct. And today, the certificate, we already keep a copy of that digitally today. All of our records are stored electronic today, including the documents you send to us. If you send us a transfer today, we scan it in our mail room. And from there forward, we're working with that scanned copy. We're not working with the original documents. Now, when I started here almost 40 years ago, we passed the piece of paper around the office in a basket. And that definitely posed a risk of something getting misfiled or laid on somebody's desk, because of when you talk about the volume of mail that we receive, it's a large volume and definitely a high risk. But today we're able to contain that all within our mail room, because as soon as we open it, we scan it and we take away that risk of it being mishandled or misplaced. And then from there forward, we push it through electronically.
So when a member sends you a transfer and the original registration certificate, that registration certificate goes away, it's destroyed or whatever. Correct. It doesn't matter what happens to it. And you reprint a new one with the new owner's information on it.
That's correct.
Correct. And all of that information comes off of the existing digital database.
That's correct. Yes. And it's been that way for as long as I've been here. In some capacity, we've always had something electronically or digitally stored, and we've expanded the data that we store. But we've been on computer systems since the 80s, and that's where all of our data is stored. So anytime we need to correct something, we have to correct it in the computer system. Now, the copies that we maintain, everything that comes in the door related to a horse, we scan it to that horse's permanent file and store it there. So we always have access to the information and can get it at any time. Yeah.
Tammy, tell us a little bit about security And there's always concern from people about the security of the digital database and where that information that you're talking about lives. And I can't ever really give a great answer on what that is. I know that there's backups and there's off-site backups for all the information, et cetera. Can you tell us some about that?
Sure, I can. The technology is definitely not my expertise, but I know enough about it that I can at least share it from my level of expertise. But we do, like I said, we scan all of the documents. So we always have those scanned documents stored electronically, completely separate database than our database, if that makes sense. So all the data that we input into our system, we call it the 4.0 system because it's version 4 of our technology system that runs all of our horse data. That is stored within a database that is kept off-site, even in a completely different city, to make sure that the database is secure and that we have as much uptime as possible. So, the risk of us going down and not having a system accessible is very low. Now, I would never say that we're not at risk because every company is at risk of being compromised in some capacity. But we have a fantastic technology team that spends a lot of effort and energy to make sure that our data is as protected as it possibly can be. And they have backups of the backups to ensure that if something should hit, we have a way to recover with minimal downtime, because we understand that what we do impacts the entire industry, and it is who we are as far as preserving the integrity of the breed and the database for those horses. So we've got those measures in place to make sure that it stays as secure as possible. And it's not, going to a digital certificate doesn't put us at any more risk than what we would be today. Because we already store everything electronically anyway. We're just giving you access to view that information that we can already view on our side.
Right. Yeah, it just, the effect that it has, I think, is that it increases the efficiencies, not only for the association, but for all the members that choose to use it too.
Yes, sir.
It's an interesting phenomena. When the digital registration was coming, it's been pushed twice. So when it was coming twice before, we saw such a strong pushback from those that wanted to keep the original registration certificate as the negotiable document. And I feel that, I understand it because Tammy, in the room right next to us right now, I have a leather bound binder that my late mother had made for me to keep all my AQHA papers in. And I've always said that if my house was burning down and I knew my family was out of it, I'd go back in for that dang binder.
I get it. Yeah, I get it. It is.
It means that much to me.
Yes.
And yet, the other foot is in the camp of being able to see the benefits of the progress in going to digital. And I can still have my binder, and I can still have all my printed papers there and available to flip through and show people and talk about. It just will be that those papers, in the event of loss, would be much easier to replace.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. Because, the copies of the certificates that, I would call them a keepsake going forward once we make the transition, there's still value in that because that emotion, like you mentioned, is there. It's very important. And just being here as long as I have, I've seen those emotions from our members. If they had that special horse and they needed to update it deceased, they wanted those papers back because they meant so much to them, and we get that. So we don't want to take that meaning away by any means, and want to make sure that there is still that emotion tied to that certificate of registration. So we'll have the ability to produce the copy of it so that that keepsake is still there and still just as valuable but allow you to do business in what's expected in today's world, where everything is online in some capacity, so that you can not be waiting on mail service and being in a hurry and things of that nature. So there's still that goal to make it as meaningful as it is today.
I think that as AQHA members or enthusiasts, we all hold a certain pride of our horses and the horses that we have owned, bred, shown, raced, or had our kids ride, or our parents ride. Just the shared experiences bond us to these horses in a way that is not the same as any other animal except maybe dogs. People love their dogs as much as they love their horses. But the pride of ownership and of the ancestry of those horses is what attaches us, I think, to the registration papers of those horses. And so we just have to concentrate on what those animals are to us and what they mean, what their ancestry is, and we can still have that paper that shows it. It just becomes a different type of document.
No, you're exactly right, and you nailed it there for sure.
It's been such an interesting journey, and you and I have talked about this before. I have to say that I think I'm seeing the AQHA become more proactive in how these kinds of things come forward and how they're addressed, and the education piece addressing the changes coming. So my compliments to you, because I know you and I have had some long and varied discussions about this, and my opinion has always been that the association needed to be a little bit more proactive about these changes coming forth. So tell us a bit about how that's changing and what's coming.
Sure. So we've got quite a few things in motion for sure. One, and I'm going to focus a little bit on registration because that's my area of expertise. But one of the things that we're doing is updating the content on our website. I think most people would agree that it's not always the easiest to find things on our website. So for registration, we're taking an approach to make it the layout as simple as we can so that you're not having to hunt through a bunch of content to find what you're looking for. And we're going to do a better job and recently worked on stripping out the old content that's no longer relevant, because I think that's part of why things get lost and make it hard to find what you're looking for. So we've created a landing page already at aqha.com/registration that will be specific to registration questions and content, so that you have a specific landing page to go find what you're looking for. And we'll start doing that with other pieces as well to just make it available, because every one of us, if you need to find something out, you're going to the internet to try to find out what you need to know before you make a phone call, because it should be available to you. So we'll structure it so that it's easier to find, and it'll be a work in progress, because if you look at our website, there's a lot of content because we're such a varied group of the industry. When you talk about every piece that we cover outside of registration, and you have the shows, and you have animal welfare, and you have racing, and you have ranching. So all of those plus 100 others that I didn't mention that are out there that need something out there to find, and we need to structure it so that you can find it. So we've got a group together that's focusing on that for each of the different areas, and it'll be a work in progress that we hope you see evolve. The other piece that we're going to try to do is, from the registration perspective, periodically we'll publish a little blog that just talks about something in the industry or something related to registration that is a commonly asked question, so that you can find what you need and keep it short so that you can comprehend what you read, and not try to take the legalese out of it and make it more what our members need to know, instead of that structure of the rules that makes it sometimes complex, even for us. So
make it for make it for everyday people.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I think that those are wonderful steps for the association to be taking. And I know that you have no small part in all of those things. And I also know, Tammy, your dedication to this association and the people in it, and you and your team. And I want to thank you and your team for all the work and all the extra work that you guys do there, because I know it's a lot.
I appreciate that. I have a fantastic team that I work with every day, and it's been fun to watch them grow and become who they are, and watch them evolve into loving this as much as the rest of us do, and they do, because they've all been here quite a few years as well. On the registration management team, we've got a fantastic team that our members should be excited about for the future.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, Tammy, I think that this is really great information, and I'm sure that anyone listening to it, you will have given them a lot of food for thought. And we'll reiterate again that you are open and available to anybody who has questions or that would like some information about the history of the AQHA or the policy direction that it's going now. I know, as I said earlier, you've always been so kind to me and taken the time to answer my questions, and you've really helped to bring me along as far as where I'm at in work with the association now. So thank you for all of that, and thank you for taking the time to be with us today.
Absolutely. Happy to be here, and yes, my phone, my email is always open. Happy to answer questions, and
yeah.
And I'd rather do that face to face rather than a social media outburst that may not have all the information. It's better just to come directly to us, and we can answer that. And if we need to address it on a bigger scale, always happy to do that as well.
Yeah. Well, I will almost bet you that I'll probably ask you to do this again at some point.
I'm happy to.
Thanks so much, Tammy.
Right.
Take care.
Too. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Quarter Horse Hauler with Ryan Fleetwood. If you'd like to hire me for an equine event as a speaker, MC, auctioneer, judge, or as a clinician for beginner or intermediate folks looking to expand their horsemanship, I'm available. You can reach me at ryan@fleetwoodfarms.com. ryan@fleetwoodfarms.com. One of my other passions is talking about breeding decisions and working to make the breed better. Whatever you need for an equine event, I might be able to help out. If you'd like to follow us on social media, please look us up on your favorite platform, streaming or podcast platform. If you'd like to support the podcast financially, you can donate at buymeacoffee.com/Ryan Fleetwood. All of our links are in the show notes. The episode was produced by me, Ryan Fleetwood, in conjunction with Starset Media. Thank you again for listening to The Quarter Horse Hauler.